Oh, this week's Torah portion, Vayikra, begins a new book of the Torah, an entirely new subject matter, korbanot, or offerings. The korbanot that Jews are commanded to offer are diverse. The offerings can be composed of bread, flour, wine, or spices. The most well-known korbanot are animal offerings. Many people assume that since animal korbanot are no longer offered today, these Torah portions aren't relevant. In this Torah, I'd like to explain one lesson that is relevant from this week's Torah portion, and through it show how many other lessons can be learned, making these Torah portions just as relevant as any other. In this week's Torah portion, we read about God telling Moshe to teach the Jewish people to offer a sin offering, and I quote, when a person, the word used is soul, unwittingly violates any of God's prohibitions and does one of them. The word the Torah uses for violating one of God's command is to sin by accident, bishkaga. The only sin that can be atoned through a sin offering is a violation of a Torah prohibition whose violation on purpose would incur the punishment of karet. Sinning by accident covers a number of different scenarios. Those include, and we'll use Shabbat as an example, knowing that it was Shabbat, but not knowing that the action you did was a violation of a Torah prohibition on Shabbat, or knowing the action was a violation of Shabbat, but forgetting that it was Shabbat, and other iterations of accidentally violating the prohibition. In his commentary to this verse, Ramban offers an interesting comment that teaches a fundamental lesson about the Torah's outlook on sin. Ramban wrote, since the faculty of thought is in the soul, and it is the soul that committed the unintentional sin, the Torah mentions the soul. Remember, that's the word used in the pasuk. In addition, the Ramban wrote, another reason for mentioning the soul is the entire reason for requiring the offerings to atone for the erring soul is because all the sins that a person commits results in a stain on the soul, and they are blemish on the soul, and the soul will not merit to meet the Creator after death unless it is pure of sin. Therefore, the soul that sinned unintentionally must bring an offering in order to achieve nearness to the Creator. If we approach sin by assuming that sin comes from a decision to sin, it seems that the Ramban is contradicting himself. At first, the Ramban wrote that sin stems from thought, and therefore sin stains the soul. He wrote that a person needs a sin offering to clean the stain and atone for the sin. Yet the sin is accidental, meaning that there was no decision to sin. If an action is determined to be a sin based on the decision, there should be no such thing as an accidental sin. How can we understand the Ramban's explanation? Sin is indeed based on a decision. The Torah doesn't prohibit objects and actions because they are taboo. Objects don't hurt the soul. Pig is no more dangerous to the soul than cow. But the decision to disobey God and eat pig is dangerous to the soul. An action prohibited by the Torah committed accidentally still contains a decision to sin because a person isn't on guard against disobeying God. Yirat Shamayim, an attitude advocated by our sages, extols a Jew to always be thinking about God and God's Torah commands. It is inconceivable for a person who has Yirat Shamayim to have a momentary lapse in awareness and violate God's word. While there is no comparison between purposely disobeying God and a lapse in awareness, both have an aspect of forgetting God in one's life, and both require atonement. Ramban's comment teaches the nature of sin and its foundation of not living with Yirat Shamayim. As a Jew, we simply cannot forget that we are subservient to God and must listen to him. Even a lapse of awareness is problematic. Shabbat Shalom.